Hello and welcome to NY Capture Photography. Today I'm going to be doing a really quick 30 to 40 minute walkthrough of Photoshop on the process of editing a photo, going from the camera, taking it out, bringing it into Photoshop, and going through all of the steps to get it ready to post up on Instagram. And so going to do a quick skin retouching and then go through and do some luminosity adjustments and ultimately some color adjustments, sharpen it up a little bit and get it ready to post up on your social media. So I hope you like this video. And if you have any questions or anything, you can be sure to leave them in the comments. So my first step, open the file up in Camera Raw, and here we go, and we're off to the races. And I want to go, my first adjustment is to quickly go into lens corrections and add these. And I'm actually going to take down the distortion. And then I go over to basic here, and I basically want to look at the gram. Here are the darks and here are the lights, and so we want to pull it a little bit over, you know. So I'm going to go just bump up the overall exposure a tiny bit. And then I don't mess with contrast. I'm first going to pull up the shadows a little bit there. And pull up the whites maybe just a tiny bit. And then pull up the blacks a little bit, right? And the highlights, you don't want, we don't want to get too many highlights and too bright on her face here. But maybe pull up the overall exposure a little bit more. Shadows a little bit more. And there we go. Starting to even this out a bit, so we don't have to, you know, overall. I think there we go. I don't mess with the texture, clarity, or dehazing slides here, and we're going to do color and saturation in the next step. So that's it for here. I'm not going to do anything else really. Just open the object here. And my first step is going to be to hit Control-J and duplicate this layer. Because you don't want to make adjustments to that to the first layer, your original file. So we want to make a copy of that, and then I'm going to go down here and click on the little icon and make a new layer. And here I do most of my skin retouching with either using the spot healing brush or using the healing brush tool or the clone stamp tool. So I'm first going to go in. I like to make my brush elliptical shaped a little bit and make it a little bit larger. The hardness maybe about 30, and that should be good. And I'm going to hit Alt to select an area nearby, and so we're gonna remove the lines in her forehead here. I'm gonna go in just subtly here, and there you go. Just get rid of those there. Again, there's all kinds of things you could do. You could do frequency separation if you'd like to. If this was a super high-end beauty retouch process, you know, we might go into that. I think this works great for something like this, especially, you know, if we're doing a quick edit. She's got beautiful skin, so it's just a matter of doing some minor blemishes. So here we go in and just touch up these little things here and there. Switch to the spot healing, maybe get that out. Again, just little blemishes here and there, and switching between the two of these. Okay. Control and Z goes back. So if you make a mistake and you hit Control Z, you can go backwards. I'm gonna go in here. That looks a little distracting to me, so I'm gonna use the spot healing tool here. Get rid of that. I kind of like the hair, the wind-strewn look of the hair. So these kind of look cool to me. I think this one is distracting, so I'm going to use particularly the healing brush tool for this. Actually, no, the spot healing tool for this. For one hair, you stick close to it, nice and tight. And I think that looks pretty good. Maybe a little thing here or there. But I like that our hair looks like it's being blown by, it is being blown by the wind. I think that's a cool look for this shot. You could get in and go, maybe get a few more of these, but I think it makes that, so I'm gonna pull in the clone stamp tool and take the flow down about 30 and the opacity down a bit. Make the brush a little bit bigger. I'm using the bracket, the left and right brackets next to the letter P. Those make the brush larger or smaller. Come in here and hit Alt and sample right next to it. And you could do that. That's one way to get rid of these hairs, clone next to it. But, you know, there's all kinds of different methods to do this. That's why actually for this shot, you know, the best method overall to deal with hair and flyaways is to look in the camera and see what you're getting while you're doing it, and see if you're happy with what you're getting at that time. I like these bokeh circles here, but this one flyaway is distracting our bokeh over here. So, but we don't want it to smudge, so that's where clone stamp. Clone stamp is good. Okay. You know, I realize a big part of my editing process is I want to try to keep it looking as natural as possible, but we also we don't want it to be distracting. You know, we want the focus to be that intense look in her eyes, and that you're drawn into her, you know, into her face, and not distracted by her hair or little blemishes or things like that. So I think that's pretty good. You could go look at her eyeballs if you want to come in here close and maybe clean this up a little bit. Clean up those little red little veins in the eye. And I'd like to use a combination of the clone stamp tool now. Come back in and clean that up a little. Take the opacity way down in the flow. Just a soft brush. Yeah, we're already on a soft brush. Kind of smooth that out. And see before and after. There's that little bit of red down here. Make the brush smaller. Go in a little closer. Go back in. Make, again, small brushes. There we go. Again, you don't want to make this look like it's not natural. You know. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. There we go. Okay. See, there's a little something in her eyeball there. Again, just things that distract, that take away. You know what, that probably, I don't know. All right. I'm going to pull up the opacity 100% in the flow, and I'm essentially using the clone, so I'm going to expand this a little there. Copy from there and pull this over a little bit more. Okay. That looks pretty good to me. Maybe this piece of hair here. I don't know. Again, you get into the hair, it can be a never-ending battle because hair, you know, it's going to smudge now and cause, and you know, is that I'm going to keep the hair the way it is. I like it. I like the windstone look. So, okay. So there we have it. There are the minor blemishes. Here's, you know, just a couple of things we cleaned up. The next step would be to go in and just do a little bit more tiny. The next step would be to go in and to do some of the luminosity adjustments. So go down here and pick a new layer, and we're going to do a curves layer. And I'm going to bump the curve up just a tiny bit here, right in the middle, right in the center. And adjust the overall. And then I'm going to select the white here and hit Control-I and invert it. And then select a paintbrush. And we're going to make sure that that is a nice soft brush. Make it a little bit bigger here. And let's take the flow down to about 5%. And so here I'm just going to fill in a little of the dark spots here. Bring back a little bit of the detail. You know, if you want to brighten up the background a little bit more. Maybe in the side of her nose. We like that definition. But we're going to worry about the eyes more later, so not too much on the eyes. But again, a nice bright spring day, so we'll fill in some of this. And that's really it. I actually haven't been doing anything. See, I thought I was making subtle adjustments, and here we go. The brush was switched to black. So I'm going to switch it to white. There you go. I thought I was just making very subtle adjustments, but let's switch it down to 3. So if you're not, you know, keep an eye on that. If you're not doing anything, or it doesn't seem like it, always, you know, you click on the little eye here and you can see the adjustments you're making. So if you're not making any, that's important. And just make sure, check over here and make sure. See, that really brings out the bokeh. These curves, it's bringing out in the background those lovely bokeh balls. Look at the flowers. Look at that, it's beautiful. So bring out some of the detail hidden in here. Bring out a little bit more in her face. And there we have it. And then that's too much though. So I'm going to pull it down. You take the opacity slider, go all the way down, and just slowly start to bump it up to about, let's go to about 48 there. Next, we're going to do another curve. And this time we're going to pull it down a tiny bit, right from here, about 1 square up, go to the corner and then pull it down. And then hit layer. Apply image. So we're going to, image, apply image. There we go. And we're going to apply that. And then the next step is going to be to go to a black and white layer. And here, this is really cool tool. We're not going to have it end up being black and white, although it's beautiful in black and white. But we're going to make adjustments here. And if you pull the slider down, look at her red hair, gets darker, and then here the yellows. So this is a kind of cool tool. If you were actually going to make a black and white image, this is a great way to see, tone the image. But we're going to select the blending mode here from normal to luminosity, because we just want to affect, we don't want to affect the color, but just the brightness of that color. So we're going to go in here and I'm going to lower this down to about there. The yellow, make it about 70. Greens. Green, you would think this is green. It's amazing. It's yellow though. So the green often doesn't do very much. Cyan, it's gonna be her jacket there. Blues, again, her jacket a lot. And the magenta, it's her lips. So there's before, there's after. We're going to do the same thing we did with that first curves layer and come in and take the opacity down to 0 and slowly move it back up till we get to the spot we like. I'm going to say there's 0. I say somewhere around 60, 54. Before and after. Next step is an exposure layer. So you go to exposure and we're going to bump up the overall exposure just a tiny bit. But if you see when we're done here, just a tiny bit, we're actually going to invert this when we apply it. So there's some of the gamma. Take that just a tiny bit. I usually do 0.0023. And then gamma correction. That looks about good. 90, 87. And then say, as we did before, go to image, apply image. But this time we're going to check the invert here. Okay. It's starting to look good here. So going to take all of these layers. I'm going to hold down Shift and select them all. And then I like to drag them down here to the little folder to make a group. And let's call that luminosity. And then now, so if you see, there's before and there's after. And, you could, some would say you just why don't you just, adjust overall the brightness and the contrast and that kind of thing. This gives you a lot more in-depth detail on which colors you're brightening and creating contrast on multiple different levels at the same time here. So that's the luminosity. And then we're going to go in quickly to color. And with color, the first thing we could do is do a gradient map. And I like to do, if you do this black and white gradient map, and you could create a stop here in the middle. Right, let's say at 50%, okay? And then click on it here and go to the brightness of it and make it 50%. Now we're gonna go halfway between those. And I learned this from Pixum Perfect, I believe, and say it's 26, we're gonna make the brightness 26. And then cut that in half to about 13. I'm just doing this quick and loose. That's 14. Great. Let's make it 14. And then halfway between here would be what, 75. Make it 75. Click on this and make it 75. And you can make numerous adjustments, but we want to click on one of these. And you can hold down Alt and start to drag or you can click on one and just press the up or down arrow. And you see how it's making an adjustment here. We don't want to get that many highlights, but first hit OK here and go in. We're going to change this again to luminosity. And then go back into your gradient here. And now let's make those adjustments. I'm actually going to make another between. This was what, the 75, 50 and 75. Let's do one at about 60 or 62. Let's make one more, 62. Or that was the 51. Let's make one more, 62. And the brightness. So you make the brightness whatever it is you make that location. So you click on one of the sliders and we can move that. See how that's filling in here? So you don't want to do that too much, but we're trying, this is to add a little bit of three-dimensionality to this, let's zoom in here. We're gonna do Control and the plus sign to zoom in. And okay, gonna go, you really just, you know, you have to play around with all of these sliders because they're all different. They all have a different effect. See, we want to go that way. This one. You don't want to cross over the other one. That doesn't work out well. I like that. Click on this one. Look at that. That's really making a nice, making real depth here. Okay. I like it right there. Just gonna hit OK. So that's before and after. Now we only really want to do that to the face. You don't want to do it to the whole image, right? So we're going to select here the white area and hit Control-I and make it black. And then we're going to paint on with white the areas that we want to do. And I don't want to do her eyes and I don't want to do her lips. So it's really just the skin. So we're going to make it white and make the brush flow 100% here. And we're going to paint this back in there. Let's see, go in on her neck. Did I like it on her hair? Yeah, it added a little bit of depth to the hair. Yeah. So, but we don't want to get the background is what. And if you go over and you miss a little area here or something, remember, you can hit X and shift the brush color and just go in and make sure that you're clearing out the areas you don't want to do. So usually, no, the eyebrows look good like that, just the eyes. Go back and forth between X. Okay, so this is a gradient map, and then again we're going to go back. There's different blending that you could do. You can try, that shows us actually where, that was actually good. That actually shows us where the border was here. So what it's affecting and what it's not. And if you see, hit X and go back and paint in here. Okay. Good. And those eyes. Okay. So we're going to switch the blending mode. We're not going to keep it in saturation mode. I was just doing that so you can see what it's affecting. But you know, it's always interesting to play around with these blend modes and see what the different modes do. But we're sticking with luminosity here, and I'm going to take the opacity down a lot. So there's nothing, right? And then slowly add it up. There's all the way is too much. I'm going to say somewhere around 51%. Okay, none, 51%. There we go. Okay, next layer is going to be a color lookup. These are kind of like presets, but not really. And I like the Fuji. You can go through and see which ones you like, but I'm just going to have it affect the color. And then I'm going to pull down the opacity a lot. Okay. Next is going to be selective color, and I like to make this white and add a little cyan. So you're adding cyan into here, not that much at all, just to a point you can barely even see about 5%. And then I'm going to add another layer of black and add some purple into the shadows here. You see, just again, same thing. This is about microtonal color harmonies. Very subtle color adjustments. Okay, that's too much. And then I'm going to do a photo filter over the whole thing, and just try different ones. You want a little cooler tone. I do think we do want to cool this up. There's a little too much orange and a little too much. I like that somewhere in there, but is that the one we want? Let's see, 80. Or this one. Okay. Yeah, a little bit less even. Okay. Now, we're almost getting on a half an hour here, so let me hurry up. The next step would be to do a hue saturation. And you could just bump up the saturation of everything, but that usually looks pretty awful. I do like how it affects the flowers there. So what I'm going to do, actually, that gave me an idea. I'm going to bump up the saturation of where I like the flowers there, right? Then I'm going to select the white part here and hit Control I again. And then I'm going to paint in with a white brush in the flowers and get that saturation back in the background here, right? See that? I'm going to overdo it just so we can see where it's doing it. And I'm going to have to go back and adjust get rid of her hair. You know, maybe even the green back here. Right. So saturate all this. Now go back to the black and Control C. I like that. Maybe this white area should be white. Get the hair. Make the brush small, fine. You know, we can get in there. You could get in there and do, I'm going to make the flow really low and the opacity low. And then get in, actually I have to put the opacity up a little bit. You know, and then take this saturation back down. We don't need it that high. Just bump it up a little bit. Nice spring day. Nice colors. Okay. Now we're going to do another one, hue saturation. And this is where you go into each individual color. So we can go in the reds and bump up the reds a little bit. I wouldn't usually go that high, but she is a redhead, so why not? Why not bump up the reds a little bit? The saturation, there's the green, yellows. Green is probably not going to do very much here at all. Yeah. It does. If anybody knows, I would love to know why what appears to be green is really yellow and why it doesn't affect the green slider doesn't really affect much. It's always yellow. The blues and the magentas, just a tiny bit. There we go. Now I'm going to take all of these, hit Shift, group them together, and I'm going to drag them down into a folder and make that the color. Before and after. And so, and you can actually duplicate, drag this down to the layer and duplicate the whole group. And that's way too much, but you could lower this down. I would actually even take out of the group that gradient map for this one and just lower it a tiny bit. If you wanted more color adjustments there. And the final couple of steps, you want to do something to our eyes. You do make a curves layer and pump it up really high there. And again, hit Control I and invert it and paint in over her eyes in white. Make sure it's in white. And I like to do opposite where the lights are. And then hit X and clean it up off her chin there. Her chin off of her eyelid. There, that looks good. And take the opacity down. You don't want it looking freaky. Just a little bit. And then we go in and dodge and burn. That would be our last step here. Go into Layer, New, Layer. And make it Mode Overlay. And click on Fill with Overlay Neutral Color, 50% gray, and hit OK. And then here we're going to use the dodge and burn tools. So why don't we burn first? Make the exposure about, I don't know, I'd say about 6. And we want to go in and See a little bit here, that seems a little bit too high. I'm going to go down to about 4. The brush larger. I like to accentuate where there already are highlights and make little streaks in the hair. You know, this is a process you could do in a lot more depth if you wanted to. Come in and maybe brighten up the eyes a little bit more underneath the eyes. And then go back in here with the burn. Make this brush much smaller. I don't know why it got so big. And come in. This is a good little trick to get the eyelashes to appear. And here, darken the brows a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to pull the whole thing down and slowly add that up. Okay. And so here's our before and here's our after. I think, let's go. The eyes are still a little too much. Okay. And I do think that luminosity, this, I'm sorry, the gradient map might be a tad too strong. I'm gonna go about there. Okay. And I'm going to do one more, just levels. Do a little levels here. Okay. Like that. Take that down. Too much. 48. So I switched the blend mode to soft light. I'm going to take that down to 42. I am done. The final thing to do, I'm going to select all of these and hit Control-Shift-D and make it to one layer. I did go over the half an hour, I believe, but I think covered a lot of different areas there. So I'd have this here. Now I'm going to export it. I'd go to Filter and I'm going to sharpen it and do Smart Sharpen. Just a tad bit. I'm going to sharpen it just the tiniest bit. If you see her eyes there, let's go down to, yeah, right around there. Lower that radius. And you do this just until you start to see it take effect. That's a little, see, there we go, that's a little grainy. That looks pretty sharp to me. Yeah, that looks good. Hit OK. And then I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to export it. And I'm going to do Save for Web here. And I like to, for Instagram or something, you could make this file about 80%. And then the pixel size, I'm going to do, it's going to be 1600 here. The shortest end will be 1600. And then I'm going to save this. And I usually, when I save, change it to the last thing, edit. That's just my nomenclature there. And I'm going to go into the original folder where I had these files. And I'm going to save them here. I'll make a new folder, Shannon Edits, and put it in there. Save the file. And so there we have it. We have, here's our original here. There's the original file. And here's our finished edit. So I hope you like that. And I'm going to post this on my NY Capture 1 Instagram and go and like it there. And if you have any questions or comments or anything about the process that I went through, I'd love for you to leave some feedback in the comments section here. And make sure to subscribe and hit the bell if you like what you're seeing. And I'll continue to do more videos and get a little bit better at this. But I appreciate any feedback. And I thank you very much.